Alright guys, I've just got a vintage game here for you today. It is a 3-game series I just played a little bit ago, and I thought it was a pretty cool match, and I thought I'd upload just a little bit of vintage. I'm just going to hop right into it here. I'm playing my vintage thief deck, which currently I think the only changes I really made is I put the 4th mental misstep in the main. I really like the 3 mana drain, 4 mental misstep, 4 force is my defense. I don't really like the Flusterstorm's main board so much. I have no idea what he's playing in the first game. And my opening hand has 2 Jace the Mind Sculptors, a Time Walk, and 2 lands and a Yawgmoth's Will. It's a little clunky. There's nothing to go with this Tinker. The Time Walk's not getting any value anytime soon. I have nothing. I'm on the play, and I have no kind of big play to make in my opening turn, as well as no defense. In Vintage, this is simply not good enough. My second hand has no mana sources at all, so this is no different than any format. This is definitely not good enough. We're going to go ahead and mold a 5. Soul Ring 2 lands with a Jace and an Ocean Thief is actually the best hand I've had so far. Not a bad 5 at all. As long as this Soul Ring doesn't get bopped by a Mental Misstep, and I get to land my turn 2 Jace and not get forced, I should be okay in any kind of blue matchup. I'll have a decent chance. It's definitely not the strongest hand against some of the other decks, but when you mold a 5, no hand's exactly excellent. Thirst for Knowledge on the top. I'm going to curve into that Jace on my second turn, or maybe even the Ocean Thief, depending on what I see, but almost certainly the Jace. And Thirst for Knowledge is not really what I want from that position. Obviously, I also don't have any extra artifacts to pitch. It's also one of the weaker cards in the deck. It's just good, decently good against anything. It's one of the cards I cut most often for my sideboard deck. So we leave with Soul Ring. It goes down without anything happening. I'm quite happy. My opponent leads with a Mana Vault of his own, so it looks like we're on a similar plan. And then he drops Moxes. With only 3 cards left in his hand, his odds of having Force in a pitch card is much lower, which makes me quite happy because he also doesn't have any 2 blue up or any kind of Jace counterspell mana up with no blue up, actually. So I'm going to go ahead and just happily play my Jace. Time Walk is now excellent here because now I have the mana for Jace online. So in addition to just cantripping, it'll also give me another Jace activation, which is excellent. So I'm going to go ahead and dig 3 and look for forces, and what do you know, I find 2, which is great. So I decide, because of how Time Walk has some decent value here, the most pitchable card is the Ocean Thief. I kind of want access to both these Force of Wills with how low my card count is here and the fact that I have a Jace online and he doesn't have anything. I decide to keep the Time Walk and the Notion Thief in my hand, and if he does something I don't like, I'll go ahead and bin the Notion Thief and then still have another force and continue to use my Jace. He goes to play his own Jace, which is definitely something I don't like. So I'm going to go ahead and bin that Notion Thief and say no to his Jace. Go ahead and use my Jace to continually refill. Pick that Force of Will back up. Get a couple Moxes from this position. I don't really want Moxes, I want gas. So I'm going to go ahead and put those on top and fetch them away immediately before I cast my Time Walk, because those are not the top decks I want. I want something that pitches to Force of Will, and I want ways to continue to gain card advantage and stop him from ever developing his board state, because I feel like I'm in a winning position. So I top deck a blue card, which is excellent. Vampiric Tutor, Treasure Cruise, and Sensei's Top. I think about this for a while. I want to be able to cast the Vampiric Tutor. The Sensei's Top is not necessarily very good from this position. I also want to keep my pitch for Force of Will. So after thinking about it, I decide that since I have no use for using my mana unless I want to hard cast this Force, which I don't, I'm going to use 4 of my mana here, as well as the 4 cards in my yard to cast the Treasure Cruise and pick the Vampiric Tutor in the top back up, and then save a black for Vampiric Tutor and keep my force up with the Mental Misstep. So that's my plan as of right now. So I'm going to go ahead and pop the Treasure Cruise. I get to see 1 extra card. And it's a mana drain, which is excellent from this position. He goes for Gush. I'm going to force Gush, because Gush is a problem. He floated the 2 blue, and he hard casts a force of his own to stop my force, so he gets his Gush off. But his lands do get picked back up, and he didn't get to use his blue. And he goes for Wheel of Fortune. So I get a Vampiric Tutor here. And I think about it for a while, and from this position, we're both going to have big hands again. Since I'm going to get the Temple, I could get something like a Black Lotus. That's obviously not a horrible idea. I could get something offensive like a Tinker. But honestly, with my Jace online, and the fact that he just bounced 2 lands to his hand, I feel like my board position is just much better than him, and he's passing me a tempo anyway. With multiple forces already, one being exiled and one in my bottom, I decide to just put one of the forces on top to guarantee I have defensive supremacy instead of just going for something degenerate. I end up hitting not a great stack. I've got a Mana Drain, a Dack Fade, and a Time Twister, a Blightsteel Colossus. It's kind of nice that I have the Jace with the Blightsteel Colossus in my hand because I can put it back down. It's obviously a dead card unless you're tinkering it, aside from like mana draining for like a zillion. I'm going to go ahead here and I play the Dack Fade, and I decide I'm going to steal his mana and continue to pressure the fact that he doesn't have much mana, and he'll have to pretty much draw on degenerate mana rocks to do anything really scary. So I'm going to go ahead and steal his mana rock, camping behind both a Force of Will and a Mana Drain, and I'm going to go ahead and get rid of Blightsteel Colossus and camp behind Force of Will and Mana Drain. And I'm going to go ahead for good measure, just throw the Time Vault out there. So now I've got good pitch fodder. With as much mana as I have, the Time Twister is actually really strong. So I'm thinking the pitch here is most likely Brainstorm. And I've also got Mana Drain. So even if he's got really good plays, we can stop them. He goes for a recall, and because I've got this Mana Drain to back it up, I go ahead and force it. I don't necessarily have to since I plan on casting the Twister, but I don't want him getting extra cards. And if he has protection of his own, I would rather him waste it on that than whatever his next spell might potentially be. He goes ahead and gets Merchant Scroll for a Dig Through Time, which makes me think he doesn't really have any kind of good things going on in his hand. So I'm going to go ahead and Mana Drain that. And even if he had a Force, it would have put him down 2 more cards and made it more difficult for him to at least do anything on his turn, being tapped out. And if he had to use a Force, he would have had to go grab a Force to stop this Time Twister. So I also get a shit ton of mana from that, which this isn't a true combo deck, so it's not a huge deal. So I'm going to go ahead and open with the Twister right away. The Thirst for Knowledge on top isn't necessarily bad if he did somehow have something, but I didn't really give him much credit for it. I get Notion Thief, so I'm going to go ahead and assemble my Notion Thief, Dack Fade and Engine here, go up to 7, put him down to 5 before I've even used my Jace. I'm going to use my Jace and hunt for my Voltaic Key to finish him off the Time Vault. And I do in fact find a Vampire Tutor, but I also have a wall of Force of Wills, Mana Drain, Mental Misstep. I can hard cast a Force, cast a Mana Drain, and pitch a Force from this position, and then put an instant win on top of my deck. And with Notion Thief in play, all of his draw spells are now dead. So his odds of being able to break through here are incredibly low. He'd have to have something insane. So he goes for Tinker, I go for Drain. He goes for Oath of Druids. Not that it matters actually, but I force it. He doesn't really have anything. It really wouldn't have mattered because I would have taken infinite turns. I guess I shouldn't have even forced that, but with 3 cards left in his hand, I still have my own Force plus a Mental Misstep. He really can't do anything. So that is game 1. Game 2, we are on the draw. I see a hand that's fairly risky in that it only has 1 land, but it has turn 1 Jace, which isn't necessarily horrible, or turn 1 Notion Thief. And I can't decide whether I want to play turn 1 Notion Thief or turn 1 Jace. Against his deck, the Notion Thief is obviously very strong, and he didn't really show me anything that deals with a resolved Notion Thief. But at the same time, I'm not really going anywhere with me resolving a Notion Thief either. With this land off the top, I probably should have went ahead and played Notion Thief. Because now that I have a second land, even though I'm still a decent ways away from the Jace, his deck doesn't have a whole lot of outs, and I'm kind of fine playing Draw-Go from this position against what he's got. That should have been Notion Thief. Instead, I decided to play Jace and draw. I put the Blightsteel down, which isn't a horrible decision. But with no extra fast mana, he now has this window to start doing degenerate things. And he has, not only did he have that, he had Gush and Recall. And then he gets to play Time Vault. Had I played Notion Thief, he would have had like possibly 1 card that isn't completely worthless in his hand, and he would have been able to do nothing. So that was definitely, in hindsight, a very poor decision, though I did think quite a bit about what I wanted to do. Obviously, I made the wrong decision. I'm still not out of this game by any means, though now I have a Tinker with no card to tinker. The game is ended. Well, this game bugged. It actually ended up being a very, very long game, and he ends up getting his Vault Key combo off with not very much life, and I was just starting to turn the corner and finally catch back up and take control of the game, but he's able to squeeze his Vault Key combo through, and I ended up losing this game, so unfortunately it bugged. But the big key of this game was on turn 1, I made the wrong decision with that Black Lotus. It should have been a Notion Thief. Would have been a longer, boringer game. But it looks like my top decks were actually really good for if I chose to play things out that way. I shouldn't have been so greedy and went for the Jace, or rather, I should have been more greedy and assumed that he didn't have an answer, because it would have just been stronger to play turn 1 Notion Thief. Well, when I just had the one land, the Jace was definitely the better play, but when I drew that second land, I should have known. Now, this hand I feel like is kind of a trap. You have a Tolarian Academy with a Mox, sure, and you can go for a turn 2 Time Twister, but what else does it really have going on for it in the first couple turns? In Vintage, you really need powerful plays in your first couple turns. I can't protect anything that he's doing. I have no force, I have no mental misstep, I have nothing. I don't have a turn 1 mana drain up, anything like that. I can't actually get to this Jace. I can't get to this Dig Through Time. This Yawgmoth's Will is useful. This is just a hand that turn 2 Twisters with a Academy and Mox Jet in play, and that's simply not good enough in Vintage. I get the second hand, and I really don't like going to 5. And it does have a force. It does have a mental misstep, so I'm decent. I'm in a good spot defensively. My offense isn't great, but I really don't want to go to 5. I get to go turn 1 Ancestral Recall and go back up to 7 cards, which isn't necessarily that great. But at least I've got defensive plays, so that if he has something strong, I can at least stop him, and I can kind of drag this game out. So I decide to keep. I see a land on top, which is excellent because I need lands, obviously. Not enough mana sources, so I'm going to go ahead and recall right out the gate. If he missteps, I'm going to misstep his misstep, and if he forces, I'm obviously going to force his force because I just direly need to draw cards here. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily force his force, knowing there's a land on top, but I probably would, because it would take me quite a while to get, potentially get a second land to get this Twister off. So I draw into a Mana Drain, a Dak Faden, and that land, which is the most important thing. So not necessarily, I'm not drawing the broken stuff that you want to be drawing in this deck. Now he plays this Mana Crypt, and I think about it for a little while, and I decide to try to force his Mana Crypt, because there's it just lets you do so many degenerate things having this extra mana in the type of deck he's playing, and even if it just makes him force back or something, I really don't mind that either, because it kind of gets rid of his gas. Unfortunately for me, he has a Flusterstorm, which I hadn't seen from him yet. It may have been from his sideboard. I'm not quite sure. So he ends up Flusterstorming my Force of Will, which is really bad. But at least he doesn't get to make a blue-colored mana play on his first turn, most likely. But he goes ahead and plays Time Vault, which makes me very scared because now he's missing just one piece. But I am in a similar position here. So I draw a second Mana Drain, which is not so bad. Plays a Gemstone Caverns, which he probably drew off the top because he didn't get it off. I see this Merchant Scroll, and I want the mana from Mana Drain. My hand is in a bad position here, and if I Mana Drain this and he doesn't have a force, which I don't think he does, or at least not pitch for it with just 3 cards in his hand, it'll let me get my half of my combo out and then Twister back, which is dangerous, but I feel like he's in a much better position, and I really need to make my land drops and get moving, or I have no chance in this game. He goes ahead and goes for the Voltaic Key, and luckily I've got the Mental Misstep in the bank to prevent him from instantly winning. Now, you might say I might not want to shuffle that Voltaic Key back into his deck, but it's really not that far-fetched for him to find a way to get Yawgmoth's Will off, or since he's a Gush deck, possibly even Regrowth. There's a good chance he's playing that card to pick that Voltaic Key back up. But either way, otherwise I'm absolutely doing nothing, and I don't feel like I can just sit here. I probably could have, but I decide I'm just going to get my Voltaic Key out, especially after drawing this Mox Jet. Maybe I didn't draw Mox Jet. I don't think I did draw Mox Jet. I drew something else that wasn't playable. And I definitely didn't draw Mystic Remora. Is this game going to bug as well? I did not draw Mystic Remora. This game is going to bug, which is going to be upsetting because it was a good game. I was going to say, why wouldn't I play the Mox Jet? And I don't remember drawing a Mox Jet. And I definitely didn't draw Mystic Remora. Oh, that is unfortunate. This was actually an excellent game. He tries to get his Vault Key combo off again, and I'm able to stop him, and I end up playing defense for almost the entire game. And at the very end of the game, he has a Runescar Demon out, and he plays a Oath of Druids, and he's dying to his own Mana Crypt. He's only at like 7 life. I was hoping that he would make, if he hadn't played the Oath of Druids, I could have simply flashed in Notion Thief and then swung with the Forbidden Orchard token he'd already given me, and I would have been able to just race his Runescar Demon. I would have been able to play Jace, bounce his Demon, and it wouldn't even really matter what he went to go get, because he would have had to got away to deal with my onboard threats. He's already potentially losing to just his own Mana Crypt, and he's only at 3 life, and if he doesn't deal with what I have on board, he just loses. He had tons of mana at that point. But unfortunately, since he plays the Oath of Druids, I can't really do anything, because it's definitely going to trigger. He can just give me a second token, and if I play the Notion Thief, it's already going to trigger even if he doesn't give me a second token. So I'm in a position where bouncing his Runescar with the Jace just would have lost me the game. So I decided that Jace's Brainstorm actually has pretty good odds of winning me the game, because I had like 5 open mana, and I pretty much had to hit either Voltaic Key, top of deck Tutor plus a draw spell. I could have hit Dig Through Time from that position. Yawgmoth would have won. I had plenty of live hits to win me the game, and I decided to make the decision to Jason Brainstorm, and I naturally hit, not Voltaic, Time Vault rather. I naturally hit the Time Vault and then end up combo killing him. This is actually a really long game. I'm kind of disappointed that it didn't pan out. I guess these vintage games tend to bug more than some of the other ones. I did bring Mystic Grimoire in against this type of deck, specifically because I saw gushes and lots of card draw and stuff like that, and this card is just a monster against them. Lets you win counter spell wars quite handedly. It's very good against all their degenerate mana rocks. You can almost easily afford to pay for it. I think I shaved my second Preordain and the Thirst for Knowledge to play these, which these are just simply better cards than those. I don't think I even made any other changes. I decided the Mental Misstep was better than the Flusterstorm and the Steel Sabotage, which I could have potentially brought in either one of those 2 cards, but I decided he plays with him playing the Voltaic Key and Soul Ring and enough good 1-drops that I felt like the Mental Missteps were just better. But yeah, so I ended up winning this 3-game series. I'm sorry that the games didn't actually pan out. Next time I will vet them a little bit better for you. But yeah, I've been on this deck for a long time, and I don't really like the full combo deck in this format very much. I feel like whether or not you win is very dependent on what you draw, and it doesn't have a whole lot to do with the lines of play you pick. And in some matchups, you can just draw shit and get boned, and other times when you win, it doesn't even feel like you had to figure out anything difficult at all. The deck is so streamlined now, where this deck, I feel like you get to make a lot of decisions when you play, which I really like, and I just really like the way this deck plays. So that's it for now. Mox Nix.